Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today we're talking about 5 things on BoardGameGeek that you didn't know how to do. Or more accurately, that you may or may not know how to do. I don't actually know how well you know how to use BoardGameGeek, or the various ins and outs and the tips and tricks and all those different things that this video has over here, so let's rename this as 5 things on BoardGameGeek that are very useful that you may or may not know how to do, but if you don't know how to do, great, you have 5 new tricks at your disposal. So that's going to be the new video, and as well as that, if you can go ahead and post in the comments down below how many of these 5 things you already knew about. I'm guessing most of you know about at least one of them, probably 2, maybe 3, but I'd be surprised if most of you know about all 5 of these things. Although some of you definitely do, just most of you probably don't know about all 5 of these things. Anyways, 5 things. Timestamps down below in case you want to just jump to whichever particular things you know about or want to see if you know about. But starting off with number 1, which is number 1, is finding users on BoardGameGeek. Did you know you can find users on BoardGameGeek? And no, I don't mean by clicking down here and then clicking over here and then clicking and searching in there. That's not what I mean by searching by username. Rather, I mean you can find users in a much more precise way. Specifically, if you go to the tab over there, you do Community, you tap Find Users, and then once you tap Find Users, there's a few different options. The one I find most helpful is Find Gamers. Find Gamers is going to allow you to search for gamers in a specific zip code and in a specific radius from that zip code. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and punch in over here my zip code over here, 44118. That's going to be my zip code, and if you're wondering about the other one, the reason for the other 28208 is that's the zip code I had of Board Game Co., the retail operation, back when I had that in North Carolina. But 44118 is the zip code I live. I'm going to punch in 5 miles, or I'll leave 5 miles as a default, honestly, that's the set miles over there, and I'm going to hit submit, and boom, you now have a list of people who are close enough to you to be able to possibly play games with, and honestly, I recognize a few of these badges because I've actually played games with a few of these people already. But over here, you can have, boom, there you go, you have a list of people over here. Why do you have someone in San Diego? Is there a San Diego in Cleveland? You learn something new every day. There's a San Diego in Cleveland, apparently. San Diego, Cleveland, is that a thing? San Diego, Ohio, more accurately. But either way, within a zip code of, within 5 miles of 44118, I have a bunch of people who I can go ahead and message. This is the part where it gets weird, by the way, because this is a very helpful trick for potentially finding people that you might be able to game with near you. I don't actually know the etiquette on messaging a random user and saying, hey, you live close enough to me, interested in gaming sometime. Like, I genuinely don't know the etiquette there. And when I say genuinely, I mean, like, if I got a message like that, I'd either delete it, respond, or not, but I wouldn't particularly care. If the information in your profile is publicly available, so you basically just stalked a publicly available database and said, hey, do you want to play board games? Because we share a love for either planting crops or miniature dragons on the board, and one of those 2 things, I mean, there might be other things as well, but do you want to get together and hang out sometime? So, yeah, you now have a tool for finding gamers near you in case you wanted to. There are plenty of other ways to find people to game with. There's meetup.com. They're going to have regular events or whatnot that you can go ahead and check out your local community, but this is one option of many to find users in case you wanted to, based on searching by the zip code, the proximity, narrowing it down, and then possibly ending up gaming with somebody. If you do use this to actually play board games with somebody, please come back here and comment on this video. I think that would be hilarious, and I'd love that I contributed to helping you find someone else to play board games with. In any case, moving on to the next one. The next one's going to be one that's actually on the home page, but there are a lot of things on the home page of BoardGameGeek that regularly do not make its way into what you actually look at. I go to the homepage, I punch my inbox, I go to the game I'm searching for. I don't really do a lot with the homepage, but if you do scroll down past the hotness, there's Crowdfunding Countdown. Now this has been there for quite some time, but it's very, very useful for seeing. There's usually a sponsored first project or whatnot, so this one does not look sponsored, but very often the first one can be sponsored, so take that into account. It doesn't mean it's not an ending soon project, just understand the first spot may often be sponsored, but past that, you have a list of projects that are ending soon, what percentage funded they are, and a link to go ahead and visit that project. So you can see Dungeon Rummy, Dungeon Generous, Winds of Numasera. This is also going to date when this video is filmed, so you can see that. We have Beast Hunt, Space Days, Food for Thought, the Dice Pen Family Collection, Reign of the Onyx King, all these various games over here. And personally, I don't know about you, I find the search on Kickstarter. If you search the tabletop category on Kickstarter, you end up with miniatures and STLs and RPGs and dozens of other things that aren't the actual board games I'm trying to find. So very often, often having a tool like this, we can go ahead and skip to something that at least has an item in the BGG database, whether it's on Kickstarter or GameFound for that matter. They have the Cats of Mont Saint Michel over here. We have So You've Been Cursed on Kickstarter. Over here, you can go ahead and get a quick glance at something, seeing what's ending soon on crowdfunding, and being able to filter past all the stuff that doesn't particularly capture your fancy. So there you go, crowdfunding content on BGG. You could go to see all over here, by the way, if you want to just get a quick scan over here. You can also sign up for Crowdfunding Weekly. BoardGameGeek has several mailing lists if you want to check those out. That will also give you a dialed down amount of information for whatever category you're looking for. But over here, you can go ahead and see all the various things you want, because there's a lot of crowdfunding projects ending soon, including, it looks like this one just launched, One Deck Dungeon just launched. That's going to be the newest one over here. We have Tirna Nog over here. We have Primates, all these new campaigns that just recently launched. From there, we're going to go ahead and move on to player count. This is one of the probably more well-known ones, at least by the people watching this video, but if you don't already know about it, it's incredibly useful. It is arguably the one I use the most. The feature I use the most from these features over here is arguably this one right here, which is you have a game. You have a game that plays 1 to 5 players. That's Agricola, a 2007 title, plays 1 to 5 players, and you may be like, awesome, 1 to 5 players, but I have a 2-player experience. Should I play it at 2 players? And the answer is a strong maybe. It's a strong maybe. You see over here, you can see the community says 1 to 5. It's best with 3 to 4. That little best tag is excellent. It's already giving you more information than the fact that the box says 1 to 5, but it's best at 3 to 4. But let's drill down on that information. Let's take a closer look and see that you can see which categories it's best at and which categories it's recommended at. Well, before I had a game group, when I used to only play games with just 2 people, I used this feature all the time to be able to see which games I should actually spend my money on. Because if a game wasn't at least recommended with 2, and very often I had to settle for recommended because I didn't have a game group, so games that I wanted to play, that like Agricola over here, Agricola is best with 3 and 4. But I didn't have the option of playing with 3 or 4 at the time, so should I get it or should I not? Knowing that it's at least recommended at 2 players, and Agricola, by the way, is great at 2 players in my opinion, although it is better at 3 in my opinion. Personally, I think it's best at 3, then I'd prefer to play it at 2 than 4 personally, but I could hear the argument in either direction. But nonetheless, you can see a sense over here of how a game is played, what the recommended player counts, and where it's not recommended. More than 5 is a strong not recommended because you can't play it at more than 5, at least not without expansion stuff. And then a 5 is already moving down lower to recommended. In fact, 5 is the least recommended player count. You can see that over here, based on the highest percentage of people said not recommended, is actually at 1. That's true. But over here in the recommended category, we have 55.1 is the lowest from those recommended, and the rest is best. You can look down the information, you can make decisions for yourself, you can see what people have to say about that. You also, by the way, another thing that's worth mentioning while we're here is you frequently can go to forums and type in over here, player count, for example, because very often that starting baseline will very often be a great way. Let's see over here. Let's punch it in. Enter it. Enter. There we go. Player count. Player count. There's often, let me see. I don't even know where you have to find it over here. You'd have to scroll down and find the titles over here because there's usually, I find 2-player often works. 2-player recommendations over here, 2-player recommendable. So for example, you can find a post over here. Basically, that initial search for the player count and the breakdown is great, but then from there, if you're like not recommended at 2 and you still really want that game, you could go ahead and check through the forums and do a little search either for player count or often 2-player or whatever player it is that you're looking for, and you'll often get, I'm going to click on that over here. This is coming to you from a 2020 over here, but it talks a bit more about the experience. You have someone saying, hey guys, I don't know this game at all, I see many additions, is this the core game? And also how well played for 2 players. And you'll see a whole conversation with people giving their own input to further drill down. So searching through the forums is a little bonus tip we're going to talk about over here, where you can search for a specific player count for a game to get not just a general yes, no, maybe, but rather an actual opinionated conversation, often with tips and tricks. Oh, I play it with 2 players, but I think it's better if you do or don't use that 3rd player, that phantom 3rd player, or take out these cards, or avoid that one rule. Even games like Catan are technically playable at 2 players, even though the box has 3 to 4. You just have to know any potential changes you care to make. But that's basically a little 2 things on player count. We have the search for player count, well, the general player count breakdown, and searching through the forums to find more information. Next up, we have files. BoardGameGeek has files on every single game, and if you're like, congratulations, I already have the rulebook, great. You may want the rulebook because you may have lost your rulebook, you need to print out a copy. Very often, if you go ahead and click on files down here, you will find a breakdown of more things, very often including the rulebook. Not always, some games don't. You can go to the manufacturer's website, sometimes you have a rulebook there, but you can also find rulebooks a lot of time on BoardGameGeek by going to files. But that's the bare minimum. I chose Kemet for a reason over here because very often you'll find different kinds of things. So Kemet, for example, you'll see from the Esoteric Order of Gamers, you'll see a breakdown of the rules. The Esoteric Order of Gamers, if you don't know them already, they do great rules distillations for the games like Chaos of the Old World. One of the best rules distillations I've ever seen, taking down like a 30-page rulebook and distilling it to 2 pages effectively of the information you need to know. If you haven't played Chaos of the Old World in 3 years and you need a quick refresher, that 2-page distillation will give you every single piece of information you need to know to play the game. They do a great job of giving you not the rules themselves, but better versions of those rules. But that's not the only thing, because you'll see little categories of what they are over here. But more than that, they'll give you very often player aids. So if you need player aids, if a game doesn't have good enough player aids, or if the player aids, they don't have them at all, so they're not good enough, they don't have them at all, that's one thing you'll get. You'll find combined aspects of things. Kemet in particular is a game that each version of the game gave you a breakdown of the abilities, but if you want them all in a single sheet, you can often go ahead and find them over here. If you go to Small World, you can find printed out sheets in Small World that have every single ability printed out on a few sheets, so you don't have to quickly bounce them back and forth between all the various expansion little pamphlets trying to find the rules for you need. If you want them all in alphabetical order, people go to great lengths to put together these amazing files for their games. And lastly, you'll often find fan-made expansion or other fan-made expansions or other things in those games. So if you ever need something for a game, if you ever thought to yourself, because I guarantee you this, sometimes you can just browse a game you love and you'll find all kinds of magical things. But if you ever need something for a game, if you ever think to yourself, I wish I had the time to do this, there's a decent chance that somebody else already has. And if they haven't, you can be that person and upload your own creations to the files, helping out the next person stuck in that position. The files on BoardGameGeek can be a magical resource that can really help you find things or help others get things that they're looking for. And then lastly, we have another one that's probably a bit more well-known. It's a more recent one. It's arguably the most recent one on the list, is BoardGameGeek's Sleeve Finder. You see, there used to be various threads on BoardGameGeek, various forum threads that would count the various sleeves or track various sleeves for various games. There were sites you can go to punch in sleeves, but BoardGameGeek added their own Sleeve Finder where you can go ahead and tap on a game. If you see that little category, we can do it on Kemet 2 over here. Tap on the game, and you can see which sleeves of which count it has in the game. So you can see for Everdell, base game Everdell needs 27 44 by 63 sleeves and 129 63 by 88 sleeves. You can also see a detailed overview of everything in a single snapshot over there, so you can get a sense of what they need, as well as the different types of sleeves you can find from various creators as well. The sleeve trick over here, the sleeve tool, is a great way for quickly looking up a game and understanding what you need when you're trying to sleeve it, because sometimes you're at home and you're trying to figure out, there's a few reasons you want this. Whether you want to buy sleeves, whether you have a closet full of sleeves and you just want to know which sleeve to pick for a game, this tool, the little Sleeve Finder on BoardGameGeek, is an excellent comparison tool that will give you both the various sleeves out there as well as the sleeve sizes you need to make sure your games are taken care of. Some games need to be sleeved, other games not so much. Kind of depends on the game, how much you use that game, and which particular game it is, which particular cards in the game there are. Some cards you're using with the hand, some cards you're shuffling a lot, some cards you don't really touch enough to care enough about sleeving, and sleeve costs will add up. Although I do recommend Sleeve Kings, hashtag not sponsored, I'm not sponsored by them, but I do like Sleeve Kings personally as a good middle ground between the price point and quality compared to other brands. I find Mayday's a little too cheap, and then other brands can be a bit more expensive and a bit thicker. Sleeve Kings is a good middle ground. In any case, that's what we have over here. These are your 5 tips and tricks for how to use BoardGameGeek in ways that you may not have been doing so until now. Like I said before, let me know in the comments down below how many of these you already knew about, and whether you actually end up using that find a gamer situation to actually spend time playing a game with some random stranger that happens to live close by to you. In any case, then until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you found this video useful, and as always, I hope you have a good one.